You're killing me, man! This is not about music! I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do it!
Gayle King can tell you the exact minute her marriage ended. Not the day, the minute. She walked through her front door at 9:16 p.m. and found a truth that would shape everything that came after. Her husband begged for forgiveness. She tried to stay, but some wounds never close. Now, after 13 years at CBS, Gayle is stepping away. And William Bumpus just broke his silence with an admission that explains why she could never fully trust again. The connection between that night in 1990 and her goodbye in 2026 is darker than anyone realized. Gayle King's story begins in a place that looked polished from the outside, yet never felt simple from within. She was born on December 28, 1954, in Chevy Chase, Maryland, a wealthy suburb where black families were rare and difference was hard to hide. She was the oldest of 4 daughters born to Peggy Tucker, a homemaker, and Emmett Scott King, an electrical engineer who worked for the U.S. government. On paper, it may have looked like a steady middle-class life. Still, that sense of stability did not last for long, because when Gayle was still a little girl, everything changed at once. At 6 years old, she was suddenly pulled out of the life she knew and taken to Ankara, Turkey, where her father had been sent for government work during the Cold War. One day she was a child in Maryland, and the next she was living in a city that felt completely unfamiliar, full of crowded streets, open markets, live sheep, and the sound of the call to prayer echoing through the day. For a young girl, it must have felt like stepping into another world. From 1st grade through 6th grade, Gayle grew up in that space between cultures, trying to make sense of a life that did not look like the one she had left behind. She attended an American school in Ankara, but even there, she stood out. She was often the only black girl in sight, and that kind of isolation leaves a mark, especially on a child. Outside school, the city was alive with movement and color, but it could also feel strange and distant. She saw things many American children never saw. She walked through bazaars, listened to unfamiliar languages, and learned how quickly people notice anyone who looks different. At home, there was no easy comfort waiting for her in the form of television or the routines she might have known in the United States. Instead, there were books, long stretches of imagination, and a growing inner world that kept expanding because the outer world was so uncertain. That life made her observant. It also made her tough. While other children were growing up in one neighborhood and one culture, Gayle was learning how to read a room, how to adjust, and how to carry herself when she felt out of place. Her family traveled during those years too, and those trips only added to the strange richness of her early life. She saw Paris. She saw Athens. She moved through places full of tension, beauty, and unrest, even if she could not yet understand all of it. By the time most children were just beginning to know their hometown well, Gayle had already lived across borders and gathered memories from places many adults never see. Then came another shift. In 1966, the family returned to the United States, and Gayle discovered that coming home did not feel like coming home at all. She was back in Maryland, but she was no longer the same girl who had left. She had picked up new habits, new sounds, and a wider view of the world. Instead of being welcomed back, she often felt judged. Other children noticed the differences right away. Her accent sounded foreign. Her experiences sounded strange. Things that had become normal to her suddenly made her stand out again. So she started doing what many young people do when they want to survive socially. She tucked parts of herself away. She hid what felt too foreign. She tried to blend in. Even then, that sense of being slightly outside the circle did not leave her. She had lived abroad. Yet she was back in America during a time of enormous cultural change, and she felt disconnected from parts of it. She had missed key moments of Black American life while living overseas, and when she returned, that gap was real. She knew who she was, but she also knew that she did not fit neatly into what other people expected. That tension shaped her. It made her sharper. It made her more aware. It also gave her something that would later become one of her greatest strengths: the ability to connect with people while still understanding what it feels like to be different from them. As she got older, that resilience followed her into school and then into college. In 1972, she enrolled at the University of Maryland and studied psychology. At first, her path did not seem to point toward television at all. She was not one of those students who had mapped out a media career from childhood. She was not chasing fame. She was trying to build a future, and psychology looked like a serious, practical direction. Yet life has a way of opening doors in places people are not even looking. And for Gayle, that door appeared in the middle of college. In 1975, while still a student, she took a part-time job at Top TV in Washington, D.C. It was not glamorous work. She handled scripts, ran errands, and did the small tasks that keep a newsroom moving. Still, what mattered was not the title or the pay. What mattered was the energy of the place. She saw how live television worked from the inside. She felt the pressure, the pace, and the strange excitement that comes with being close to breaking news. The studio lights, the countdowns, the rush when something went wrong at the last second, all of it pulled her in. Before long, she realized she felt more alive in that environment than she did sitting with textbooks and psychology case studies. That realization changed everything, though not all at once. After graduating in 1976 with a degree in psychology, she chose not to follow the expected path into counseling or graduate school. Instead, she accepted a production assistant job at WJZ-TV in Baltimore. It was the kind of position many people overlook because the work happens behind the scenes. She wrote copy, handled phones, managed small tasks, and stayed out of the spotlight. Yet sometimes, the most important years of a life begin in exactly those invisible places. Because that was where Gayle was learning the craft. She was watching, absorbing, and finding her footing in a field she had not planned to enter, but was beginning to love. At WJZ, another life-changing connection was quietly waiting for her. Oprah Winfrey was there too, younger than the legend she would become, but already on air and already trying to make her own way in a newsroom that was not built for women like them. At first, Gayle and Oprah were simply co-workers. They knew of each other more than they knew each other. One worked behind the camera, the other sat under the lights. They moved through the same halls, but their worlds inside the station were still separate. Then, one winter night in 1976, Baltimore was hit by a snowstorm that changed everything. The weather made it difficult for Gayle to get home safely, and Oprah offered her a place to stay. It could have been a small act of kindness that ended there. Instead, it became the beginning of one of the most famous friendships in modern media. Gayle expected a simple sleepover to get through the storm. What she got was a long conversation that lasted through the night. They talked and talked, moving through fears, dreams, family stories, awkward memories, and the feeling of being young Black women trying to find their way in spaces where they often felt alone. By the next morning, something had shifted. They were no longer just people who worked at the same station. They had seen each other clearly, and once that happened, the bond stuck. That friendship became one of the great constants of Gayle's life, but her own career still had to be built step by step. She stayed with television because she had fallen for the work itself, not just the idea of it. Her psychology background helped more than people might expect. It taught her how to listen, It taught her how to notice what people were feeling. It taught her how to ask questions that made others open up rather than shut down. Those skills would become part of her style long before most viewers could name it. From Baltimore, she kept moving forward. She worked in Kansas City, and then in 1981 she arrived at WFSB-TV in Hartford, Connecticut. That move would define a huge chapter of her life. Hartford was not where the nation was looking. It was not the center of fame. Yet it became the place where Gayle truly grew into herself as a journalist and as a woman. At WFSB, she worked hard, covered local stories, built trust with viewers, and became a familiar face in homes across Connecticut. Night after night, she showed up. She reported through elections, tragedies, community stories, and the ordinary rhythm of local news. She was not chasing attention. She was building credibility. That quiet grind mattered. Over time, viewers came to trust her because she did not try too hard to impress them. She came across as real, steady, and warm. She could be serious without sounding cold. She could be funny without losing control of the moment. That balance is rare, and audiences notice it. As the years passed, she became deeply connected to Hartford. It was where she grew up professionally, but it was also where much of her personal life unfolded. In 1982, she married William Bumpus, an attorney. Together they built a family and had 2 children, Kirby and William Jr. On the surface, it looked like Gayle had found the life so many people hope for: a respected career, a marriage, children, and a growing reputation in the community. Yet beneath that image, life was more complicated. She was balancing early mornings, deadlines, motherhood, and the constant demands of television. At the same time, her marriage carried pain that would later become public. The relationship eventually broke down, and the divorce in 1993 was a deeply difficult chapter in her life. That pain did not destroy her, though it clearly changed her. She kept working. She kept showing up. She kept carrying herself with the same grace viewers had come to trust. That ability to stay steady while living through heartbreak became part of her strength. It also gave her a deeper emotional range as an interviewer, because people who have been broken and rebuilt often know how to sit with the pain of others without turning away. Even while Gayle was becoming a beloved local anchor, Oprah was rising fast on the national stage. Their lives were moving in different directions, yet the friendship only grew stronger. Oprah's fame brought more attention to Gayle over time, but it did not create Gayle's talent. It simply made more people curious about the woman Oprah trusted most. In Hartford, colleagues would hear stories from Gayle about Oprah visits and adventures. And now and then, that larger world brushed up against local television. Still, Gayle remained focused on her own work. While Oprah became a global figure, Gayle was still doing the steady work of becoming excellent. Eventually, national opportunities began to appear. Some came and went, some worked, some did not. In 1997, with Oprah's support, Gayle launched The Gayle King Show, a syndicated talk show. It looked like a major breakthrough, and in some ways it was, because it pushed her into a much bigger arena. Yet success in television is never guaranteed, even with powerful support behind you. The show did not last. It was canceled after 1 season, and that kind of public disappointment can shake anyone. For many people, a failed show might have felt like the end of the dream. For Gayle, it became another lesson in endurance. She did not disappear after that setback. Instead, she found another lane and widened her reach in a different way. In 1999, she joined O, the Oprah magazine, as editor-at-large. That role introduced her to millions of readers who may not have known her from local television. In print, just as on screen, Gayle's voice stood out because it felt honest. She wrote in a way that made readers feel she was speaking directly to them. She shared pieces of her own life, including painful truths. And that honesty helped people connect with her beyond the role of anchor or famous friend. Then came another television chapter. In 2011, Gayle hosted a show on Oprah's new network, OWN. It gave her another national platform and another chance to show what she could do in a bigger space. Yet even that opportunity soon led to something larger. Later that year, she agreed to join CBS This Morning, and in January 2012, she stepped into the role that would change how the whole country saw her. At the time, CBS was trying to rebuild a struggling morning show, and not everyone believed the formula would work. Gayle entered that space alongside Charlie Rose and later Norah O'Donnell. And from the start, something clicked. She brought seriousness without stiffness. She brought ease without losing depth. She could sit with celebrities, politicians, grieving families, and people caught in scandal, and somehow make the conversation feel human. Morning television often leans too far in one direction, either too soft or too hard. Gayle understood how to hold both. That balance helped transform the show. Over the years, her presence became one of the biggest reasons audiences stayed with CBS. The show grew. Ratings improved. Critics noticed. Viewers trusted her. She had spent decades building toward that moment, though from the outside it may have looked sudden. In truth, there was nothing sudden about it. The national spotlight was simply arriving late to work she had already been doing for years. That national stage also brought harder tests. In 2017, Charlie Rose was fired after multiple allegations of sexual misconduct became public. It was a painful and highly visible moment for the show and for everyone connected to it. Gayle responded with honesty and steadiness. She did not dodge the reality of the situation. She spoke clearly, even while emotionally shaken, and people noticed that too. It showed viewers that her credibility did not disappear when the story got uncomfortable. If anything, it became stronger. As the years passed, Gayle also proved herself in major news moments. She covered tragedies that left the country stunned. She reported through grief, violence, and fear, and her strength in those moments came from her ability to keep the human side of a story in focus. She did not flatten pain into headlines. She made space for people. That made her coverage feel personal without making it about herself. And that is harder than it sounds. In March 2019, Gayle King sat across from R. Kelly and helped create one of the most unforgettable moments ever seen on live television. The timing made the interview even heavier. Just weeks earlier, the docuseries Surviving R. Kelly had aired and brought years of abuse allegations back into full public view. Then, on February 22, 2019, Kelly turned himself in to Chicago police and faced 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse involving 4 women, 3 of whom were minors at the time. The pressure around him was already intense, and when Gayle landed the interview that no one else could get, the whole country was waiting to see what would happen. The conversation was filmed in Kelly's Chicago home, and from the start, Gayle understood exactly what kind of room she was walking into. Other journalists wanted the interview, but Kelly's team chose her. That alone made it a major get. Still, she did not walk in blind. Before sitting down with him, she had already spoken with Azriel Clary and Joycelyn Savage, 2 young women connected to him, and she came prepared with sharp questions and steady control. She also agreed to certain limits before the interview began. There would be no questions about Aaliyah because of ongoing legal issues, and there would be no discussion of possible new charges. Even with those rules in place, the interview still turned explosive. As Gayle pressed him, Kelly kept denying everything. He pushed back hard, blamed blogs, blamed lies, and insisted people were trying to destroy him. But Gayle did not let the heat of the moment change her tone. She stayed focused and kept asking what needed to be asked. When she looked at him and asked whether he had ever had sex with anyone under 17, he fired back with a quick and repeated no. Still, her calm did not break, and that calm became the center of the entire exchange. She was not trying to match his energy. She was letting it reveal him. Then came the moment that changed everything. Around the 21-minute mark of the interview, Kelly suddenly lost control. He shot up from his chair, started pounding his chest, waved his arms, and screamed through tears. He shouted that he was fighting for his life. He yelled that people were killing him. He said he had given 30 years of his life and did not understand why no one believed him. It was loud, messy, emotional, and impossible to ignore. For a few minutes, the interview stopped feeling like a regular TV segment and started feeling like a public collapse happening in real time. What made the scene even more gripping was Gayle's response. She did not jump up, she did not panic, she did not start shouting back. She stayed in her chair, legs crossed, notepad in hand, and kept her voice low and steady. Again and again, she softly said, "Robert," trying to bring him back down without losing control of the room. While he raged only feet away from her, she held her ground. That contrast was what turned the clip into something bigger than a celebrity interview. His chaos made noise, but her stillness carried the power. Later, Gayle admitted that she did have a moment of concern. She said his arms were moving so wildly that she thought he might hit her by accident. Even then, her focus stayed on finishing the interview. She understood that if she stood up or broke the moment, the interview would probably be over. So she stayed exactly where she was and let the moment play out. That decision mattered. It kept the camera rolling, and it showed viewers what composure really looks like under pressure. Once the clip aired, the internet exploded. By the next day, people all over the world were sharing the video, quoting Gayle, quoting Kelly, and turning Gayle's expression into one of the biggest memes on social media. Her face became the reaction image for everything from awkward family dinners to public meltdowns. At the same time, serious coverage poured in from major outlets, all pointing to the same thing. Gayle had walked into a storm and never flinched. That was the story people could not stop talking about. The interview grew so big that CBS quickly turned it into a primetime special. That move alone showed how much impact the footage had. The network gave Gayle a rare Friday night spotlight and built a full special around the sightdown, along with the interviews with Clary and Savage. Viewers tuned in huge numbers, and the moment stopped being just another morning show segment. It became a national media event. The praise followed just as fast. Oprah Winfrey, who had known Gayle for decades, publicly applauded her calm and focus. Her children called too, amazed by what they had seen. Everyone close to her understood the same thing the audience now saw. Gayle had always been strong, but this interview pushed that strength into a whole new light. It did not just go viral because R. Kelly shouted. It lasted because Gayle refused to lose herself in the middle of that shouting. In that one interview, she proved that quiet control can overpower a full breakdown, and that is why people still remember it. Years before that interview made her look unshakable on television, Gayle King had already lived through the kind of betrayal that can split a life in two. Back in 1982, she married William Bumpus after they had been dating since the year before. At that point, everything about their life looked promising. Gayle was building real momentum at WFSB-TV in Hartford, Connecticut, and Bumpus was rising in law as an assistant attorney general. They looked like a strong, ambitious couple with stable careers and a future that seemed secure. As the years passed, that picture only seemed to grow stronger. Their daughter Kirby was born, and later their son William Jr. arrived. Gayle threw herself into work and family at the same time. She anchored the news, handled long days, and still poured herself into raising her children. From the outside, it looked steady. There was a home, a routine, a marriage, and 2 careers moving forward side by side. Gayle believed in that life fully. She later admitted that she was deeply invested in the marriage and did not see the cracks forming underneath it. Even Oprah, who had been close to Gayle for years, sensed something was off from the very beginning. She later said that when she saw them together, she did not feel joy around the marriage. Still, she kept that feeling to herself. Gayle was in love, focused on building her family, and convinced she was creating something solid. So she kept moving, trusting the life she had built. Then came the night that changed everything. On June 24, 1990, at exactly 9:16 p.m., Gayle walked into her home and found her husband in bed with another woman. That alone would have been enough to leave a lasting wound. But what made it even worse was who the woman was. She was not a stranger. She was someone Gayle knew, someone close enough to be inside her world. In one moment, Gayle lost trust in her husband and in a friend she believed she knew. When she confronted the woman, the answer she got was colder than she could have expected. Instead of shame or apology, the woman simply said, "I never liked you." That line stayed with Gayle because it turned the betrayal into something even deeper. It was not only cheating, it was hidden dislike, false closeness, and humiliation all at once. The marriage was damaged, but so was her trust in people around her. William Bumpus begged for forgiveness, and for a time, Gayle tried to work through the pain. There was counseling. There were attempts to repair what had been broken. And for a while, she stayed in the marriage longer than many people realized. She was trying to protect her family, protect her children, and hold together something that had already been shattered. But the trust was gone. Once that foundation cracks, everything else starts to give way. The divorce took time and was not finalized until 1993. Through all of it, Gayle stayed focused on her children. She made sure they were protected from the ugliest parts of what happened. She did not turn them against their father. She did not use the pain to poison their relationship with him. Instead, she kept putting them first, even while carrying her own hurt. That hurt lasted in ways people could not always see. Gayle later admitted that the betrayal changed how she viewed friendship, especially with women. It made it harder for her to trust. It made it harder to open up. The affair was painful, but the part that stayed sharpest was the fact that the other woman had once stood inside her circle and pretended everything was normal. That kind of wound does not disappear quickly. Years later, Gayle would speak about the moment with a dry kind of humor that only made the pain underneath it clearer. In a famous line, she joked that she was not a huge fan of the woman she caught naked with her now ex-husband on June 24, 1990, at 9:16 p.m., but that she did not remember the details. The joke landed because the exact time told the truth. She remembered. Of course, she remembered. Some moments never leave. Then, many years after the marriage had ended, Bumpus made a public apology. He said he had been haunted by what he had done and called it a life-altering choice. He praised Gayle for the way she had handled herself and for how she had kept the children and co-parenting at the center of everything. The apology mattered, but it did not rewrite the past. By then, Gayle had already done the hard part. She had survived it, raised her children, and built a life beyond the damage. That is part of what makes her story so powerful. She did not let public success erase private pain, and she did not let private pain stop her from becoming who she was meant to be. After the divorce, her career kept growing. She became bigger, stronger, and more respected. But underneath that rise was a woman who had already been tested in one of the most painful ways possible. That is why her calm in later years felt so real. It was not just TV polish. It was earned. It came from heartbreak, from betrayal, from learning how to stand still when life is falling apart around you. By the time the public saw Gayle King sitting across from R. Kelly and refusing to break, she had already spent years learning how to hold herself together when everything around her was trying to come undone. That same old betrayal kept echoing far into the future, even when people thought the story had long been buried. In 2016, William Bumpus publicly apologized, years after the marriage had ended, and his words brought the pain back into headlines again. He said he had been haunted by his choice and admitted that what he did changed all of their lives. He praised Gayle for her grace, for her strength, and for the way she protected their children through it all. It was a rare public moment from a man who had mostly stayed quiet, and it reminded everyone that some mistakes do not fade with time. Still, the apology did not become the end of the story. Instead, it reopened the deeper truth underneath it. What happened to Gayle in 1990 was not just an affair. It was a double betrayal. It came from her husband and from a woman she believed was part of her circle. That second wound cut differently. It was the reason trust became harder after that. It was the reason she later admitted that making new female friends did not come easily. The affair hurt, but the fake friendship left a scar of its own. Even so, Gayle never let that scar harden her into bitterness. She kept moving. She kept raising her children. She kept building her career. She stayed careful, yes, but she did not let one terrible moment define every part of her life. In time, her children grew into successful adults, and the family found a way to keep going. That mattered because it showed the kind of discipline and emotional control Gayle carried long before the rest of the world started calling her fearless. Then, years later, a strange new chapter appeared. In late 2025, fake AI images spread online, showing Gayle as a bride and even suggesting she had secretly gotten engaged to a mystery man. The pictures looked real enough to fool people at first, and soon she started receiving messages congratulating her on a wedding that had never happened. Her own children even asked who the man was. Gayle addressed it publicly with humor, but there was something sad under the joke, too. After decades of public interest in her love life, people were still projecting a fantasy onto her. By the time 2025 was coming to a close, Gayle King was no longer just dealing with memories from her past. She was also facing serious questions about her future. Her CBS contract was set to end in May 2026, and after more than a decade, as one of the biggest faces in morning television, reports began swirling that her time in that role might be winding down. For many viewers, the thought was surprising. Gayle had been such a steady presence on screen that it was hard to picture CBS mornings without her.